I was that girl who smiled at everyone, always with her hair tied up, her dress neatly pressed, scraped knees, and a heart in pieces that no one could see. At my house, pain was routine. We just weren't allowed to call it by its name. My father was a cold man, cold as marble. His presence in the room was enough to freeze any attempt at affection. My mother? A woman erased, not by choice, but for survival. She smiled with her mouth, but her eyes were always sad, as if silently crying out for help that never came. I grew up hearing phrases like, "You're too sensitive. Swallow your tears. If you throw a tantrum, you'll go to the dark room." And so I learned, feeling was wrong, talking about what hurt was drama, and asking for help, a sin. I remember one night in particular. I must have been around 9. I had a terrible nightmare. I went to my parents' room crying. My father got out of bed in a fury, grabbed me by the arm so hard. It left bruises, threw me into the dark room, and locked the door. I screamed. I begged. No one came. That night, I learned that even fear had to be hidden, and that's when I started disconnecting from my own pain. I became the good girl, the one who got good grades, the one who smiled at everything, the one adults praised. But inside, I was already beginning to disappear. That fragile, silent, emotional foundation became the perfect soil for me to fall, years later, into the hands of someone who not only didn't love me, but destroyed what little I had left. But you'll understand that in the next chapters. Did you also grow up hiding your pain just to survive? Leave a comment below. Sometimes your story can save another woman. I was 19 when I decided to leave home. I traded the emotional rigidity of my upbringing for a temporary visa and a suitcase filled with more hope than clothes. I crossed the ocean and went to Dallas, Texas, to live with a distant aunt. The plan was simple: work as a nanny, learn English, save money, maybe take a course, and hopefully build the life I always dreamed of. In the first few months, I felt free. I could walk the streets without fear of yelling, choose my own food, sleep whenever I wanted. It was like breathing fresh air after years in a suffocating basement. That's when I met Alex, a charismatic Brazilian, 11 years older, who claimed to have a lot of life experience. He worked with sound and lighting for events and loved to tell stories about the places he'd been, the women who desired him, and the mistakes only he knew how to fix. He looked at me like I was rare, and I, so starved for affection, believed that finally someone truly saw me. It started with flowers at the door, good morning texts, surprise gifts. He'd take me to dinner and say, looking into my eyes, "You're different from the others. You have a sad shine, but I'm going to take care of you." That broke me. How did he know I carried sadness? And why did he say he would take care of me? I didn't realize it, but I was already being molded. It didn't take long for him to convince me to move in with him. He talked about saving money, being practical, and the adult life we needed to build together. My aunt didn't like it, but I insisted. I moved into a small apartment with him on the outskirts of Arlington, 30 minutes from downtown Dallas. That's where the fairy tale began to rot. At first, it was just comments. "Why did you smile at the cashier? Do you really think that American friend is trustworthy? You don't need to work so much. I can handle it. Stay home more." Then came the invisible punishments. He'd disappear, stop replying to messages, come home at dawn. And when I asked where he'd been, he'd joke, "Why are you so insecure? You have trauma. You need help." I started thinking the problem was me. I became quieter, pulled away from friends, stopped posting photos, changed the way I dressed, my colorful dresses, gave way to oversized t-shirts. I even stopped dyeing my hair because he said blonde drew too much attention, and loneliness became my only companion. The emotional abuse was subtle, but deep. When I cried, he rolled his eyes. When I was sad, he said he was tired of all the drama. One night, I tried to talk to him about how I was feeling. I was overwhelmed and just wanted to be heard. He interrupted me mid-sentence, grabbed a pillow, threw it hard at my face and screamed, "You're unbearable. You complain all the time. No man can stand you." I ran to the bathroom and locked myself in, sat on the cold floor, hugging my knees, trembling. It wasn't just fear, it was shame. Shame for having believed in the love of someone who now made me hate myself. And the worst part? The next morning, he brought me coffee in bed and said, "I'm sorry, I was just tired, but you need to stop provoking me." And I believed him. That cycle repeated so many times I lost count. His "I'm sorries" always came with flowers, dinners, or sex. And I, completely entangled, confused, believed love was this. Pain with intervals of pleasure. I began developing anxiety, had panic attacks when he was late. My hands would shake. I had insomnia. One day I fainted at work because I hadn't been able to eat properly for days. But I told no one. I said it was stress. The truth was, it was fear. Fear of being trapped and not knowing how to escape. Fear of admitting that I, who had always sworn never to repeat my mother's story, was living a nightmare disguised as romance. And all of it thousands of miles from home, in another country, with no support system, no family, no one to see what was happening behind closed doors. If you've ever lived in that silence, where emotional abuse is so well disguised that even you doubt your pain, then you know it destroys more than a slap. It steals your identity. And you'll soon understand how far it went. Because I hadn't hit rock bottom yet. There was still more to lose, including my dignity. Have you ever felt guilty for something you knew deep down wasn't your fault? Share in the comments. Your voice can break another woman's silence too. There isn't just one moment when everything falls apart. Ruin comes in installments, silent, gradual. And when you realize it, you're already living among the ruins of your own soul, trying to remember who you once were. Rock bottom doesn't come with an alarm. It just arrives. And when it does, you're too broken to react. With Alex, I lost everything. Slowly, in small concessions that felt like decisions. I told myself it was for love, that he was just difficult, and that I also had my flaws. After all, he said it every day. You're unbalanced. No man will ever put up with you. I'm the only one who stays with you despite everything. I started repeating those phrases in my head. When you hear a lie too many times, it becomes a belief. And I started to believe I was hard to love. I lost my nanny job because he complained about the hours, said he didn't like the American family I worked for. I accused the woman of being rude just to quit without him making a scene. Then I tried giving online Portuguese lessons, but he said my voice bothered him during the recordings. I became financially dependent on him. And that's when the trap tightens. When you have no way out anymore, when the world outside feels hostile and you're afraid to even ask for help, that's when the narcissist has you exactly where he wants. I woke up anxious, went to sleep crying. I was ashamed of who I had become. At 22, I was nobody. Not a student, not a professional, not a partner. Just a body existing to please a man who diminished me every day. The verbal abuse turned physical. Not with punches or slaps. He was too clever to leave obvious marks. But with shoves, arm grips, hair pulls. Once, he smashed my phone against the wall because I answered a call from my mom and took too long to hang up. The phone shattered into pieces. I knelt to pick them up off the floor while he screamed that it was all my fault. Another time, he made me leave his mother's house during Sunday lunch in the rain because I said the chicken was a little salty. He threw the car keys at me and said, "Go. Since you're so smart, walk back to Brazil." I had nowhere to go. I walked for an hour until I found a gas station where I borrowed a phone. He only came to get me when it got dark. And on the drive back, he was silent. Didn't apologize. Just said, "You embarrass me. You're a disgrace as a woman." That night, I vomited and had a fever. He slept peacefully, as if nothing had happened. One morning, he came into the bathroom while I was showering and stared at my body with disgust. He said, "Look at what you've become, not even a trace of the woman I fell in love with. You're flabby, faded. I don't even feel attracted to you anymore." Those words sliced through my soul like a blade. I immediately covered myself, in silence. Spent the rest of the day without eating, just crying on the couch while he watched soccer as if I didn't exist. The humiliation became so frequent it started to feel normal. At the supermarket, he mocked my accent loudly when I tried to speak English. "She thinks she speaks English, poor thing. Sounds like a 5-year-old. In front of other Brazilians, he'd say I was weak, that I'd never adapt to American life. "She's useless. Here, can't even get a job, lives off me." I developed a fear of going outside, paranoia. One day, he accused me of offering myself because I smiled at the grocery store cashier. He said, "If I find out you're flirting with men on the street, I'll leave you here. You'll disappear. Don't think I'll keep supporting you. You're trash without me." Yes, he called me trash. And the cruelest part? I started to believe it. I lost weight. I looked like a ghost, slept poorly, had anxiety attacks just from hearing his key in the door. My whole body would tremble. Every time he came home, it felt like the arrival of an executioner. And the worst? I wanted to please him. I tried. Cooked dinners, cleaned everything, dressed up. And still, he always found something to criticize. "This rice is awful." "You don't know how to dress." "You're stupid." One night, I woke up gasping for air. I had a panic attack so intense I thought I was dying. He looked at me with disdain and said, "Drama. If you were really dying, you'd be dead already. Stop faking sickness for attention." I ended up in the hospital alone with an anxiety attack. Lied to the doctors, saying everything was fine. Lied to myself, saying he would change. Until one night, he came home clearly drunk. I was afraid. He stared at me in the hallway, eyes glazed, and said, "You ruined my life, and you're going to pay for all of it." I froze. For the first time, I saw death in his eyes. I locked myself in the bedroom, pushed the dresser against the door. Stayed up all night with a kitchen knife under my pillow. It was the first time I realized, if I didn't get out, he might kill me. That night, I understood it wasn't drama. It wasn't exaggeration. I was in danger. The next morning, he left for work, and with trembling hands, I began packing a backpack. But I didn't leave, not yet, because even after everything, I was still afraid, not just of him, but of having nowhere to go, of not making it, of the terrifying possibility that maybe he was right, that I was trash without him. That's the true rock bottom, when you don't even have the strength to scream, when your soul is buried under layers of shame, guilt, fear, and confusion, when you know you're dying inside, and still you stay, because you think that's all you deserve. If you've ever been in that place, then you understand what it means to lose everything, including your dignity. But what I didn't know was that even in the mud, God still whispers, even when you've already given up on yourself. And it was one of those whispers that would slowly start to turn my life around. Have you ever gotten to the point where you didn't recognize yourself anymore? Leave a comment. Sometimes, sharing is the first step to breathing again. I wish I could say I left that same day, that I packed my things, walked out the door, and never looked back. But healing doesn't begin with escape. It begins with clarity. And mine came in doses, small, painful fragments of truth. A week after that night, something unexpected happened. A neighbor, an older woman who barely spoke Portuguese, knocked on my door while Alex was at work. She handed me a piece of paper, written in messy handwriting. "If you need help, I can call someone. You are not alone." I froze. She had heard the fights, the yelling, the sounds of things breaking. I didn't even know her name. And yet, that simple act of kindness was the first time someone saw me, truly saw me, and didn't turn away. That day, I broke down in the bathroom and cried for 3 hours straight. It was the first time I cried not from fear, but from the realization that maybe, just maybe, I deserved better. I started researching shelters in secret. Using the neighbor's Wi-Fi, I accessed websites about emotional abuse, narcissism, codependency. I read stories that mirrored mine, word for word. And for the first time in years, I thought, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. This is real. One night, while Alex was out drinking with friends, I took everything I had, my passport, a change of clothes, and that note from the neighbor, my lifeline. I walked out. My legs trembled with every step. I didn't even know where I was going. But I knew one thing. I wasn't coming back. I slept in a women's shelter that night, sharing a room with strangers who also carried invisible wounds. We didn't talk much, but their eyes told me everything. We were survivors of the same war. In the weeks that followed, I got help, therapy, legal aid. I filed a protection order and started rebuilding my documents. Got a part-time job cleaning offices, took the bus, swept floors, and every night thanked God for one more day of peace. Freedom wasn't glamorous. It was painful, messy, lonely, but it was mine. I remember standing in the mirror one morning, tying my hair back and seeing someone I hadn't seen in years. Myself. I wasn't the same girl who had arrived in America full of dreams. Was stronger, wiser. And though the pain hadn't fully healed, it no longer defined me. I decided I would turn my story into purpose. I enrolled in community college and began studying psychology. I was fascinated by the dynamics of abuse, the patterns of trauma, the resilience of women. Everything I had lived through, the gaslighting, the fear, the loss of identity, now became fuel for my mission. I wanted to become a therapist. Not just any therapist. I wanted to be the voice I had needed during my darkest days. I wanted to tell other women, you are not crazy. You are not broken. You are not alone. And that's what I do today. I sit across from women whose eyes look just like mine did. And I hold space for them. I listen. I cry with them. And I remind them, dignity can be taken, but it can also be reclaimed. I help them name the abuse, recognize the patterns, heal the little girl inside who was never protected, rebuild from the rubble, one piece at a time. Because I know the way out. I walked it barefoot, bleeding, and I came out on the other side. I still have scars, nightmares, triggers, but I'm free. And that, to me, is everything. If you've ever felt like you've lost yourself in a relationship, if you've been told you're too much, not enough, nothing without them, know this: they lied. You are more than your pain. You are more than what they made you believe. And you don't need to stay stuck in survival mode forever. Healing is possible. Dignity can return. And one day, you'll look in the mirror and see someone even stronger than before. Have you survived a toxic relationship? Do you know someone who needs to hear this? Leave your story. Your voice matters, and your story might save someone else's life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more real stories and emotional healing journeys.